I used to think the only way out was forward. That if I just kept improving, kept building, kept becoming something more, I'd eventually outrun whatever was haunting me. That was the lie. Not because growth is bad, but because growth, the way we talk about it, became another disguise, another performance, another quiet way of saying, who I am right now isn't enough. There was a time I kept a list in my drawer. Books to read. Speak with more confidence. Be more present, less reactive, more grateful. I filled journals with morning routines and evening reflections, convinced that if I did enough of the right things, the fog in my head would finally clear. But it didn't. I still woke up tired, still flinched at my own thoughts, still felt like I was holding something broken inside of me that no achievement could glue back together. I still woke up tired, still flinched at my own thoughts, still felt like I was holding something broken inside of me that no achievement could glue back together. And worse, I felt guilty for not feeling better. Because wasn't I doing everything right? I was journaling, I was meditating, I was reading all the books people recommended, I was saying yes to things that scared me. I was tracking progress. And yet I still felt hollow. That's when I started to suspect that maybe the thing I was running from wasn't a weakness. Maybe it was the truth. And the truth was this. I was exhausted, not just from life, but from the constant demand to improve it, to make meaning, to optimize, to evolve. Every day started to feel like a test I didn't study for. Every silence felt like failure. Every quiet moment was just space I was supposed to fill with some version of getting better. But I didn't want to get better. I wanted to stop. No one tells you how seductive that word can be, growth. How it can mask avoidance. How it can keep you so busy fixing yourself that you never stop to ask why you think you're broken in the first place. I had turned myself into a project, always renovating, always under construction, never home. The truth is, I was terrified of stillness. Because in stillness, you can't hide. You don't get to distract yourself with progress. You don't get to soothe your fear by measuring how far you've come. In stillness, you just are. And if you've spent years believing you're not enough, being still feels like drowning. But eventually, I got tired of swimming toward a shore that kept moving. I remember the day I stopped trying. It wasn't dramatic. I just woke up and didn't reach for the to-do list. I didn't open the self-help podcast. I didn't try to reframe anything. I made coffee. I sat in silence. I stared out the window. The sky was gray, nothing profound, but something inside me didn't flinch. I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't becoming. I was just there, and the world didn't collapse. That was the moment I understood stillness, not as giving up, but as coming home. See, growth had become my escape. A way to avoid sitting with the parts of myself I didn't like. If I could just become smarter, stronger, kinder, more disciplined, maybe I wouldn't have to face the loneliness, the doubt, the fear. But those things don't disappear. You can bury them under 100 books, 10,000 steps, a dozen motivational speeches. They'll wait. Stillness made me look, really look. I started noticing things. How much of my self-worth was tied to productivity. How uncomfortable I felt doing nothing. How I treated rest like a reward instead of a right. How I panicked in silence. How I needed to explain my existence, even to myself. It was in stillness that I realized I wasn't broken. I was just tired. And the cure wasn't in pushing harder. It was in stopping long enough to listen to what the exhaustion was trying to say. I began to let go of the version of me that was always improving. I stopped trying to become the best version of myself. I stopped tracking habits. I stopped setting goals. I let the lists go. I let the metrics go. I let the pressure dissolve, even if only for a while. It wasn't easy. There were days I felt useless. Days I doubted whether I was wasting time. Days the old voice came back, whispering, "You're falling behind. You'll regret this. Look at everyone else. They're building. They're climbing. They're winning. And you're just sitting." But slowly, something shifted. The quiet stopped feeling like absence. It started to feel like space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to remember who I was before I turned myself into a task. I started having thoughts that weren't about efficiency. I started feeling emotions I hadn't labeled. I started being present without needing it to be profound. And then I noticed clarity. Not the clarity you read about, not a sudden insight, not a revelation. Just a soft knowing. that I didn't have to chase life, that maybe it was okay to let life come to me, that maybe sitting still wasn't falling behind. Maybe it was the only way to hear what mattered. Stillness taught me that I didn't need to build a better version of myself to be worth something. I didn't need to keep earning my place in the world. I didn't need to keep justifying my existence with progress. I was already here, and that was enough. Even now, I fall into the trap. Sometimes I'll feel low and catch myself searching for a solution, a new routine, a new idea, a new way to feel on track again. And sometimes I give in. That's okay. I don't fight it anymore, but I also don't forget what I learned. That the peace I was chasing never lived at the end of a checklist. It lived in the moments I gave myself permission to stop checking. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to grow right now. You don't have to become someone else. You don't need to find a reason for every feeling. Sometimes clarity doesn't come from understanding. It comes from waiting and breathing and sitting still long enough to hear what your life has been whispering all along. Not what's next, just this moment, this breath, this version of you that doesn't need to move forward to matter. I remember once I went weeks without checking the news. No articles, no updates, no commentary on how the world was ending or beginning or transforming. I just didn't want to be pulled again into that whirlpool of urgency. It wasn't denial, it was detachment. I wasn't running from reality. I was stepping away to find something more immediate. My breath, my heartbeat, the shape of a shadow moving across the floor, the smallness of now. And in that stillness, I noticed something that scared me. Without distraction, I had no one to blame for the weight I was carrying. No one to fight. No system to rebel against. Just myself, my choices, my patterns, my expectations. It's easier to believe life broke you. It's harder to admit you've been dragging a version of yourself you outgrew long ago. For a long time, I thought becoming meant shedding weakness. That growth was the road to becoming untouchable, unshakable. But now I think growth, at least the kind we glorify, is just another way to delay being honest. Honest about who we are when we stop trying to be impressive. There's a kind of bravery in stillness, not the loud kind, not the kind that gets applause, but the quiet kind that sits with confusion and doesn't demand resolution. That feels pain and doesn't rush to name it a lesson. That watches something fall apart and doesn't immediately start rebuilding. I had a friendship once that meant everything to me, the kind that anchored me, that saw me through some of my worst. We talked every day, shared music, ideas, silences, until slowly, then suddenly it was gone. There was no betrayal, no explosion, just distance, incompatibility maybe, or exhaustion. I tried to fix it, to grow through it, to understand it, but nothing worked. Eventually I stopped trying. I let it end without clarity, without closure. And in that stillness, I learned that not everything broken is meant to be healed. Some endings don't teach. Some stories don't circle back. Some people don't return. And that's not a failure. That's life. I spent years trying to be the kind of person people could never leave. Reliable, kind, evolving. I believed if I just kept working on myself, I'd become indispensable. But it never worked. Because people don't leave you for who you are. They leave for who they're becoming, or who they stop being. Growth doesn't prevent abandonment. It doesn't shield you from loneliness. It doesn't make your heart unbreakable. Sometimes it just hides how much you still need to be seen, to be held, to be told you matter, even if you're not moving. Stillness doesn't give you those answers. It doesn't make the ache disappear, but it gives you space to hold it differently, to let it settle, to stop fixing it long enough to understand where it's really coming from. And sometimes in that silence, you hear something unexpected. Not a solution, not a breakthrough, just your own voice, softer than you remember, saying something like, "This hurts, and I'm still here." That's not growth. That's something else. Maybe grace. I started living slower, not out of wisdom, out of necessity. The fast life stopped making sense. The rush, the urgency, the ambition, they felt like someone else's clothes I had forced myself into for too long. I took them off. And underneath, I wasn't shining. I wasn't glowing. I was just breathing. And somehow, that became enough. Now, when people talk to me about their pain, their confusion, their loss, their need to evolve, I don't tell them to grow. I don't give advice. I just sit. I stay. I tell them what I needed to hear when I was drowning in my own silence. That stillness isn't the absence of life. Sometimes it's the first time you're really living. You don't need to explain why you're not trying harder. You don't need to frame your pain as a stepping stone. You don't have to redeem your story. You can just let it be. Let yourself be raw, messy, quiet. There's no applause for that, no metrics, no transformation arc, but there's peace. Not every day, not all the time, but enough to know you're still in there. The real you, the one who isn't performing, the one who doesn't need to impress, the one who can sit in a room alone, without music, without goals and not panic. Stillness won't fix you, but maybe, just maybe, it'll remind you that you are never broken.